Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's public safety briefing led by Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Phil Banks. Following our last speaker, we will open it up for a few questions from the media, followed by some questions that have been submitted by the public ahead of today's briefing. I would now like to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Phil Banks.
Good morning. I'm joined here today by Hassan Naveed, who's the Executive Director of the Office for the Prevention of Hate Crime, who's here as we kick off Pride Month 2023 to talk about the work his office does and provide some safety tips for all those celebrating this month. We also have Inspector Anthony Russo, Commanding Officer of the NYPD's Harbor Unit, and he will be discussing, as we enter these summer months, what the Harbor Unit does to keep our water safe and give you a little breakdown and an insight of exactly what goes into that unit. And then once again, we're joined back by Deanna Logan, who's the Director of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, and actually Hassan's boss.
Good morning.
And she coordinates the New York City's programs to divert individuals from the criminal justice system into treatment or support services, as well as assisting previously incarcerated people as they transition back home. And Mark J. held a summit last week that brought together hundreds of people to discuss what the city is doing around diversion and reentry. And she's here to tell us about that and how that summit went. And it went very well, and it was very encouraging. So if you are joining here for the first time, we want to welcome you. We hold these public safety briefings on a regular basis to bring you information on the various New York City agencies that are part of our office. And we call it the public safety ecosystem, with each of these agencies doing to keep you safe and tips to help you protect yourself, right? So this is one team. So the mayor has said from the beginning, take all the public safety agencies, make them one. Let's get the community involved, the non-for-profits involved, everybody involved, because safety, true public safety, can only be delivered if we deliver it as a team. And if you would like to stay informed about these briefings and other news from this administration, visit hearfromeric.com and sign up to receive emails from the mayor, and you certainly will receive an email about the upcoming topics. You can formulate your questions. You can send your questions in. We will try to get to as many questions as we possibly can, and the ones that we cannot get to because of time constraints, we certainly will reach out and make sure you get your answer. Okay, so as we all should know, right, the month of June marks a significant occasion in the LGBTQ plus community, Pride Month. It's a time to celebrate love, diversity, and equality. And also has a special meaning here in New York City, as this is the birthplace of the modern LGBTQ plus rights movement, at home to the largest Pride celebration in the United States each year. And this is something that we as a city should be proud of. Particularly this year, we're expecting many Pride celebrations to get back to their pre-pandemic levels of participation. We certainly hope so. And as the mayor announced yesterday, we will be flying the Pride flag, the Philadelphia Pride flag, the transgender flag outside of City Hall all month in honor of Pride Month and to send a message that we stand with the LGBTQ plus community. So while this is a month for celebration, as well as a time for action, New York City is a leader in the country on equal rights, but we recognize that there is more work to be done, and we want to make sure that everyone is safe. So right now, we are going to, people have questions, how are we going about that? What events are taking place? How can we celebrate? And how can we protect a vulnerable community that there is still a lot of hate against this particular community? So Hassan, talk to us. What are we doing?
Yes, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Banks. Hello, folks. Happy Pride. We have a month-long celebrations happening in various parts of the city. Queens is this weekend. We have Harlem coming up, Brooklyn, and then also New York Pride, among other events. And we're looking at New Yorkers and visitors will be partaking in these Pride celebrations all month long. And just as a reminder, no matter your race, color, sexual orientation, or gender identity, the City of New York does not tolerate any form of hate, bias, or discrimination. The Office of Prevention of Hate Crimes was formed in 2019 to coordinate the city's overall response and prevention efforts on hate crimes. We're part of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, and as part of our Pride efforts, OPHC has invested resources and continues to work with LGBTQIA+ organizations on community-based efforts during the many Pride events that are happening this month. Now, these community-based approaches seek to build comprehensive efforts that involve all of us collectively working with our partners in law enforcement, as well as in government and other city agencies, as well as community-based organizations. We are collectively working together to ensure your safety during this month. And before I go into some of the efforts, it's important to go over some safety tips during this month as well, too. And so when you're out there celebrating Pride, it's important to be prepared. And these tips are coming from our engagement with the Anti-Violence Project. I'll go over that later on, as well as the NYPD, LGBTQ liaisons. So what can you do? Make a safety plan. Be prepared. Being prepared and establishing contact with your trusted circle and outside is very important should an incident occur. Communication is key. Some key questions to ask yourself as you prepare should be, who's in your trusted circle? And who can you update about your whereabouts as you go out? Who needs to be consulted and informed if something occurs? I know many of you have these group chats. Maybe it's time to develop another group chat with your friends, your family, your loved ones, to be able to keep them informed about your whereabouts. Be aware and communicate. This is a month of meeting new people at the various Pride parties, clubs, or events. And so make group plans among friends and check in often. Share information with friends about where you're going and when you'll check in again. Protect your personal information on your phone. Your phone has sensitive information and credit cards and contacts on it. Some folks may use facial recognition or fingerprint recognition. It's much more important to use passcode that you can type in to be able to protect your personal sensitive information. Travel in groups. As you think over your safety plan, please know that there's safety in numbers. Your group could also be that trusted circle or some of the folks in there that you check in with ever so often. Meet in public and travel safety. If you are meeting someone new, make sure to meet them in public. It allows for more safety. As you're walking home or to a subway station, stay in well-lit, populated sidewalks. Avoid shortcuts or walking through parks at night, alleyways. As I've said before, there's safety in numbers. Again, your safety is key, so trust your instincts, and if you feel unsafe, you can leave. And lastly, please don't forget, call 911. If you witness anyone acting suspicious or threatening, or an incident occurs, call the police immediately, dialing 911. As I've mentioned before, the Office for the Prevention of Hate Crimes coordinates the city's response and prevention efforts on hate crimes. OPHC funds and supports over 50 organizations on community-based efforts. And all this is a part of the mayor's program called Partners Against the Hate. OPHC has been working with the New York City Anti-Violence Project, a local community organization that serves the LGBTQIA+ community. As part of OPHC's Partners Against the Path program, the Anti-Violence Project has launched its All Places, Safe Spaces Pride 2023 campaign. Whether you're attending Pride events in Queens, Harlem, or wherever else in the city, our community partner, the Anti-Violence Project, will be actively involved in many of these events. And what they'll be doing is they'll be canvassing and tabling at Pride events throughout the month, passing out the safety tips I'd mentioned earlier, as well as other resource information for folks that are celebrating. And there's also a hotline. LGBTQ New Yorkers can also call AVP's hotline, and the number is right over there, for free crisis support, safety planning, connection to counseling, and other LGBTQ services that are provided for folks throughout the city. And lastly, there are trainings. This is something that OPHC is supporting as well. The Anti-Violence Project is offering 2 free trainings this month to support community safety planning for individuals, as well as event producers, groups, venue managers, organizations that are hosting publicly LGBTQ visible events. And for more information on those trainings, please visit http://avp.org/pride-2023. Listen, every New Yorker should be able to go out at night, enjoy our city's renowned nightlife with friends, and come home safely to their families and community. Our LGBTQIA+ community must be safe and feel space, especially during Pride Month. And so OPHC stands with LGBTQ community, and through our collaboration with the NYPD, the New York City Office of Nightlife, the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs Unit, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, with the Deputy Mayor's Public Safety Team, among all of us, and the Partners Against the Hate that represent this amazing group of nonprofit organizations, we will continue to engage with LGBTQ community and conduct outreach, trainings, canvassing at many of these events to promote safe pride and partying. And lastly, the New York City Police Department is accepting requests to re-examine homicide cases, including cold cases involving LGBTQIA+ victims from concerned family and friends. The NYPD Detective Bureau will facilitate these requests and provide information on the status of cases and overall facts to determine whether a case should be re-examined. For more information about this initiative, please visit the NYPD's website, click on About, and then on Re-examining LGBTQ Cases, and it'll take you to an intake form. Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Banks.
Thank you. You know, you gave out a lot of good information, and the information that you gave out actually can be applied to a lot of different safety tips. But let's just be like one thing clear when I'm taking from that, right? This is almost like evil at its purest form, that people take actions against someone for who they are.
Yes, sir.
And an attack or any type of venom against this community is an attack against society. You know, so whether you're part of that community or not, when someone attacks that community, they're attacking society. Evil can win if good doesn't stand together. So this is almost like a call for action for not just the LGBTQ+ community, but just for our everyday New Yorkers, right? We have to stand together, we have to support each other, and we have to make sure that we can do all we can to just eradicate that. But most of the time, it's Pride Month. We want to make sure that they enjoy. Everybody who wants to enjoy and I'm going to assume that these events are not just if you're part of the community, right? Almost anybody can
Open for
they go open to that.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Allies are called.
Allies are good. Allies, so very good. So thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we're going to hear from Deanna Logan. Deanna had a very interesting summit. I had the fortunate to be invited to it. She allowed me to attend this particular summit. It was a diversion summit, and once again, it was one of the things that the mayor has stressed consistently is that when you are, creating this pie, this cake, whatever you want to call it, as many people involved as possible. I mean, there was a lot of people involved at this particular summit that you had, right? So it just wasn't just city workers. It was non-for-profits there. I saw some religious leaders that took place there. And what I took from it was that, hey, we want a society where nobody commits crimes, right? We don't want crimes in our society. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. But when we talked about the people who do commit crimes, they all do not need to go to jail, and that's where diversion comes in. What we can do as a society to stop them from getting into jail.
Correct.
But in the fact that they had to be incarcerated when they're coming out, how do we support them that they don't make a return trip, right? And there was a lot of interesting things there. So can you just share exactly what we're doing in that particular regard?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Banks. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and joining us. My name, as Deputy Mayor Banks said, is Deanna Logan, and I'm the director for the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. Everybody affectionately refers to us as MOCJ. We are the think tank and coordinating entity for the mayor and for Deputy Mayor Banks. We advise on all of the criminal justice policy and serve as mayor's representatives to the courts and defenders, as well as to state and city agencies, law enforcement, not-for-profit foundations. Deputy Mayor Banks is being a little humble this morning. I don't know why, because he forgot to tell you all that he actually gave the opening remarks to the hundreds of people at this wonderful summit that we did about our reentry work. So thank Deputy Mayor Banks for that. That support was greatly appreciated and really welcomed by all of the participants at the summit. I want to step a little bit back before we get into the summit exactly, but Deputy Mayor Banks hosts these briefings so that we can give you clarity on all of the creeks that lead into the one river of public safety, right? And that results in the safe neighborhoods that all New Yorkers deserve. So our work with Mayor Adams and Deputy Mayor Banks is really to support the commitment that this administration has to address public safety as an interconnected and holistic investment in people across the criminal justice system, right? When MOCJ thinks about criminal conduct, we focus on addressing the factors that contribute to why a person is going to commit a crime. Our teams collaborate with partners across the criminal justice system continuum to provide individuals the skills and the support that they need to disrupt their individual patterns of criminal activity. The services that we work to provide include ones that a judge would order an individual to attend as part of a sentence for a criminal case. And those programs are ones that are called Alternatives to Incarceration. Other programs are voluntarily attended by individuals that are impacted by criminal justice. But the first ones that the deputy mayor is talking about are the ones that people who have committed a crime are to be sentenced to, and that the judge is referring them to, they have to do them. And these alternatives to incarceration provide programs that balance accountability and supervision in community. So not jail, not prison. When a person is sentenced to this alternative to incarceration, and across the criminal justice spectrum, we know there are lots of acronyms, right? So you'll hear lots of people who actually work in this space say ATI, ATI. This is what they're talking about. It is partner providers that individually evaluate a person that's been sentenced by a judge to identify the triggers that may cause the person to reoffend. And then they create the activities for the individual, factoring in those triggers, and then including the support that a person is gonna need in the community in order to be successful members and New Yorkers coming back to the community. And these accountability measures, plus any case management and coordinated services. And those services can be outpatient services for primary care and mental health, substance abuse treatments, as well as education, job training, empowerment and self-help, housing assistance, money management, and post-program transition planning. The investments are an integral part of the criminal justice system. They give judges the tools to sentence individuals to activities that will discourage future criminal activity and reintegrate people into society. We, MOCJ, currently have 14 dedicated not-for-profit organizations that operate approximately 24 ATI programs in New York City across all 5 boroughs. Overall, in this first 9 months of fiscal year 23, those partners have served over 5,660 people. These programs support healthy communities. Now, when we're talking about the programs that are not ordered by a judge, those are the ones that are people who have criminal justice involvement, who want to make sure that they can be functioning members, voluntarily attend themselves. And those are the reentry services. MOCJ has reentry programming that is coordinated by its Community Justice Reentry Network, referred to as CJRN. And we work to provide a supportive transition, including release planning in jail and prison. This continuum of service can start as early as when somebody has just been arrested and up through when a person is ready to be released from jail or prison. The supports provided by the 10 CJRN service providers consist of wraparound services that are determined by the specific needs of the individual that's seeking help. And those also may include paid short-term employment, job training, career certifications, connections to permanent employment, and holistic wraparound services that also include mental, behavioral, and physical health care, family support and reunification, benefit assistance, case management, and education, as well as housing support. Now, during incarceration and upon release, interested individuals work with reentry mentors who help facilitate all aspects of reentry on an individual basis. The reentry mentors develop relationships with released individuals to encourage participation in the services and programs, the case planning and coordination during incarceration combined with the robust services in community, help to ease the path to a stable life outside of custody and reduce the likelihood of individuals returning to jail or prison. Many of our service partners, which a lot of people don't understand, are committed to individuals for life. So even if the person is no longer part of case management, they can always go back to the providers that supported them in their reentry journey and ask for assistance and guidance. We here at the administration, as Deputy Mayor Banks started us out with, are committed to ensuring that these services are invested in appropriately as a city, and that we meet the needs of the courts, the district attorneys, the defense counsel, and participants. So that means we're constantly speaking with our partners and working to assess the changes in the criminal justice landscape, identify any gaps and new needs, and more often than not, as Mayor Adams and Deputy Mayor Banks have demonstrated on numerous occasions, that simply means that we all just have to get in a room and talk it out. And so last week, we did just that. We convened stakeholders for a diversion and reentry summit, and as Deputy Mayor Banks humbly pointed out, he gave our key opening remarks. During this day-long event, members of the courts, district attorneys' offices, defender organizations, faith leaders, thought leaders on housing, partner service providers, sister agency members from the Department of Probation, the Department of Correction, and Mayor's Office of Community Health came together to discuss best practices, gaps, and challenges. They wanted to make sure that we understand what we are seeing in the current diversion and reentry landscape. Our team is now synthesizing the information we learned from the summit and focusing on the areas that we need to strengthen. We and our partners in the criminal justice system are committed to our continued collaboration to bring resolution to challenges and provide even more robust services. We look forward to sharing more details and insights that are gleaned from the summit. Under Mayor Adams' and Deputy Mayor Banks' leadership, we are clear that across the criminal justice continuum, public safety is a common goal of New Yorkers and requires the cooperation of all of us. So thank you, Deputy Mayor Banks. Your support is always greatly appreciated.
Thank you. So, so let's just talk about this for a second, right? Now, my colleague here, Inspector Russo, I spent many years in the NYPD, and I've said this when I was a young officer and to the time I retired, arresting, right, putting people into the criminal justice system is not the answer. It's a small, unfortunately necessary part, but society has to find a different way. Now, if we define who, commits these crimes, we can break that down to the various different segments. There is a large number of them that can be saved. A lot of them do not know how to read. A lot of them don't have any support system, and I am not making excuses. I'm saying there is a percentage of them that as a society, we need to be able to give some type of assistance to because we can divert them. And it was very encouraging, right? And she keeps saying, I gave the keynote, I gave 2 minutes, and they just couldn't wait till I was finished speaking before they got to the real speakers, right? But it was just some really interesting dialogue that's going there. We can save these people that's divert them. But then the ones that have to go and pay a debt to society, right? If we put them into the criminal justice system and we don't teach them how to read, right? And we don't give them any support at all, when they come back out to these neighborhoods, they're gonna commit the same amount of crimes. I mean, actually, they're gonna become worse because they're years older, right? So we have to get the criminal justice system, I would argue, in this country right. So I think that you're doing, I don't know if it's politically correct, I can't say you're doing God's work, right? Is that politically incorrect now? You're doing just phenomenal work that's taking place here. I certainly applaud you. But also, it's not just you, it's not just administration, right? It's the community that's out there, these diversion programs, these unsung heroes of New York City that is doing it. We can save a lot of these individuals, or overwhelming majority of these individuals. We can divert them, we can give them reentry services, and we can actually help produce them into productive members of society, and that's what we need to do. And to the audience out there, we need your feedback, right? We can't do this alone. So it might be that one suggestion that you do have, right? So just make sure that we put out there the office, Mark J's email, certainly my office's email or my email myself. Give me your ideas and suggestions. Let's see how we can work that out. But hats off to you, to most things that you do, Deanna, because your office or your unit always seems to really just churn out really, really good and positive stuff. And I appreciate it very much. So certainly last, right? What's the saying? It's going last but not least. That's how it goes. Last but not least, we have Inspector Russo from the Harbor Unit, right? And I was in Harbor Patrol for years ago, probably before you was even in the police department. I know people just say, they got a Harbor Unit? And they do have a Harbor Unit, and they provide many different functions that a lot of people just don't realize. And the ones who didn't realize it, you're going to realize it now because the commanding officer, right, Inspector Russo is going to tell you, he's going to tell you a little bit about their search and rescue, their counterterrorism efforts. We have June coming up. This is the opening of these beaches. A lot more people are out in the water. Water safety is imperative. So, Inspector Russo, tag, you're it.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor Banks. Thank you for this opportunity. Good morning, everyone. So the NYPD Harbor Unit, we have a rich history. We're around since 1858. We started out with wooden boats, steam-powered vessels, gas engines, diesel engines. Now we're up to some jet-driven boats, which are like your jet skis. A lot of things we see in the summer. Right now, you could go buy a boat. You can, without a license, without knowing anything, you can go purchase a vessel, and you're the captain. You're going out. You can bring out a bunch of friends. You don't have any experience. You don't know the equipment. You don't know the boat very well. It's very different than driving a vehicle. First of all, it steers from the rear, where a car drives from the front. You can't pull over to the shoulder if you break down like you can with a car. You have trouble on a boat, you have to anchor, and you have to call for help if you can. That's why your safety equipment is important. So you'll see us out there doing motorboat inspections, but they're not more for enforcement, it's more for education and safety. So they will stop you and ask to see some of your items such as flares, sound signaling device, a radio. It's all for your safety. It's all stuff hopefully you'll never have to use, but if you have a boat, it's definitely stuff you want to invest in. You want to have a VHF radio to call for help. And if you do have to use that, it's VHF channel 16. That's the international distress signal that'll go to Coast Guard as well as NYPD. We're on VHF 17 if you want to raise us directly. If you have something that's like non-emergency, maybe you see some jet skis near a ferry and you want to alert us to it. And you want to have your cell phone. You're in New York City waters, so you're going to hit a cell tower. If you call 911, you'll hit a cell tower and it'll come to Special Operations Division radio, which is what Harbor monitors, and we'll be able to respond. So we have 24/7 response capability. We also have a full 24-hour, 7-day-a-week scuba team, as well as 2 divers in a helicopter with aviation. So the way that works is aviation crews the helicopter. They have the pilot, the co-pilot, and the crew chief, which is the guy who operates the hoist. If you ever watched like The Guardian, the Coast Guard film, the guy who operates the cable, and 2 of my divers. They're able to deploy in surface rescue gear or full scuba. So whether it's a submersion or a surface rescue, they're able to deploy from that helicopter. Most important thing is if you do call for help on a vessel is location, 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 like they say with real estate. Give us your location. If you can't give us anything else, give us that. If you have a GPS, look at your latitude and longitude on it, read it out, give it to the 911 operator, put it over channel 16. If you can't do that because your GPS is not working or you lost power or you don't have one, give us the landmarks that you see, buoy numbers. Try to give us a couple of landmarks. I see the Verrazano Bridge to forward. I see the Marine Parkway Bridge to my right. We kind of know you're south of the Verrazano Bridge. And make some noise when we are responding. If you have a horn or a sound signaling device, that's why all that stuff is important. Like I said, you can't pull over to the shoulder, so all that safety equipment, your flares and all that stuff is very important. Some of the common things we see during the year is overloading. Your boat has a capacity plate. It's usually near the helm, which is where you steer from. It'll tell you how many people you can put on that boat and what the weight limits are. So you want to kind of stick to that, especially if you're going to go out in rough weather. You might even want to cut that down a little bit. because the more people you put on a boat, the lower it is to the water line. And that's when waves can come over and swamp the boat. Another thing is, obviously, people associate alcohol and boating. That's great for the passengers, but the guy driving the boat is subject to the same laws that you are when you're driving a vehicle. So you don't want to drink. You can't have an open container in your hand. You can't be boating while intoxicated. And boats, when they collide, they don't crash into each other like cars where they'll just hit and push the other car away. Boats go up and over smaller vessels. So an accident is much more deadly on a boat than it would be with a vehicle.
Listen, that was a lot of good information. So let me just try to break this down. What about the swimmer who does not own a boat, that's out at the beach? What are some of the safety tips that you want them to be prepared for? What are you seeing as far as that is concerned, et cetera, et cetera? So we gave a lot of good information to the boaters, but the majority of the people going into the water are not going to own a boat. What are we saying to the swimmers out there who are visiting our many beaches, right? So we have, every borough, right, is New York City is water,
Yes.
right? It's the water. So talk to a swimmer for a second. What do you want them to know?
Yeah. So the most important thing with swimming is know your limits, respect the ocean. It's much different than a pool. You can't see the bottom. The water's colder. You're subject to wind, waves, current, and respect it. Know your limits. If you're not a good swimmer, don't go over your head. Most importantly, even if you are a good swimmer, is swim in only guarded areas where the lifeguards are working. Because anyone can have a medical emergency, a cramp, and if you're not where the lifeguards are, no one's going to see that you're in distress. And that's most of the times, unfortunately, when we have these drownings, it's people who go to unguarded areas or beaches after hours when the lifeguards are no longer around.
Now, people know where the precincts are, right? So how many scuba, quote unquote, precincts do you have? And you call them precincts, and where are they? And just give us a little information on that.
Okay, so they're called harbor bases. We have 5 of them. We have Harbor Adam, which is in Shellbank Basin by Russo's on the Bay, close to JFK Airport. We have Harbor Charlie, which is
That's off of Cross Bay Boulevard, correct?
off Cross Bay Boulevard, right on that same strip where Russo's on the Bay is. No relation. Otherwise, I would not be here talking to you.
Family business.
We also have Harbor Charlie, which is also my headquarters and the headquarters for the scuba team. That's in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, the 7-2 precinct, Brooklyn Army Terminal. We have Harbor David, which is on the Intrepid. That's in the Hudson River. That's 46th Street and West Side Highway. We have Harbor George, which is near LaGuardia Airport, and that covers the waters of Queens and Bronx going out to the Long Island Sound. And then we have our launch repair shop in the Harlem River, which is where we repair all our vessels.
So we do all the repairs on our own vessels.
Yes.
Now, talk about scuba quickly. Is scuba part of the harbor unit? Is it a separate unit? Are you the commanding officer of the scuba unit? Tell us a little bit about the scuba team.
So the scuba team is under the harbor unit. I'm the commanding officer of the harbor unit and the scuba team. They have a separate supervision assigned to them. They have a lieutenant and sergeants, just like any other unit in the police department, but they fall under me. They have the toughest physical on the job because they operate in almost zero visibility. They operate in currents. There'll be cold water, warm water, dark of night, great days. They're out there in all conditions, and they do dive every single day. So speaking of what Deputy Mayor Banks was talking about, counterterrorism efforts, we do them above the water, below the water. So the harbor launches will do directed patrols and all kinds of patrols at critical infrastructure in the harbor, power plants, airports, bridge stanchions, tunnel vents. The scuba team will dive those things, and every day they're assigned a different location to check bridge stanchions, tunnel vents, seawalls. Like, for instance, before the 4th of July, which I'd like to get into at some point about safety with that, we will check the seawalls where all those people are going to be gathering to make sure there's no suspicious devices.
Now, scuba, which you're the commanding officer, they do work closely with the aviation unit, right? So tell us about that relationship and why is that important and what is that?
Okay. So aviation, they can get there a lot quicker than us, and that's why it's critically important that we do have 2 scuba divers on the helicopter. So the aviation unit runs the helicopters. They have the pilot, the co-pilot, and the crew chief. And then 2 of my divers are assigned to work with that air crew. They could deploy in full scuba or surface gear. The importance of that, like Deputy Mayor said, is if there is a distress call of people in the water, the helicopter could be there almost any point in the city within 8 minutes, even with their pre-flight check. So they may be first on the scene. And then I have my scuba launch, the divers that are on the boat, to back them up if the dive operation becomes more complicated and more dives are involved.
So in the event that we get a call that someone is in the water, or there's an emergency that's taking place, aviation is going to launch. They're going to have 2 scuba divers, and when they get to the scene, the scuba divers are going to deploy from the aviation helicopter, go down there to try to mitigate the emergency, right? And that's done for rapid response.
Yes.
But then subsequently, the harbor launch with the scuba divers for backup is coming as well.
Yes, yes.
Very good. Excellent. And I think we had some. I heard some good news last week that we have a female scuba diver. Is it the first female diver?
Yes, the first female scuba team member. She passed the physical about 8 months ago, which is, as I said before, is the toughest physical on the job. She's a legacy also. Her dad worked with me. He was a sergeant in scuba. Since retired, moved on, and she came to the Harbor Unit a few years back. Her dream was to become a scuba team member. Trained very hard for it, passed it, and just passed our rigorous 8 months of training and is an official scuba team member now.
So just give just a real quick example of what is some of the training that you have to go to in order to pass the qualifications. 'Cause I got tired listening to it a few seconds ago. So just explain to the audience briefly what that is.
Okay, so it starts with the physical. Like I said, is the most rigorous on the job. 12 chin-ups, 37 push-ups, 50-something sit-ups, a mile in 6:48, 500-yard swim. And then they kind of torture you underwater to make sure you're comfortable with your scuba gear. That's where you earn your bones and get on the team. Then you start your 8 months of training. And a lot of it is zero visibility diving in the most terrible conditions, dark. You'll have entanglement. They'll bring you to places where there's old pilings, wrecks. So there's a lot of entanglement, and they dive free. They don't dive tethered. So they try to expose you to every single type of dive you can do. You also go for ice dive training, where you're underneath the ice. They'll cut a hole in the ice. We send them upstate to train with the state troopers. And they'll cut a hole in the ice and have to dive underneath the ice to do simulated rescues. They learn to jump out of the helicopter as well as be lowered, put victims in baskets, bring them back up. They all go to New York State EMT training, so they're the same that you would get if you called 911 and you get a basic life support ambulance. They're EMT certified, so they could treat the victim once they're hoisted back up into the helicopter.
So I'll end with this. Success is having the first female diver. Progress is when we have the second, third, and the fourth. So let's make sure that we can continue.
We're not going to stop.
To do that. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so I guess that concludes our weekly briefing today. So Derek, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We will now take any questions, on-topic questions that we have from the media related to today's presentations. Katie Honan from the city, you can now unmute your line.
Was that for me, Derek?
Yes, that was. Hi, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks for this really great briefing. My boat tip, you don't need to buy a boat, you just got to get a friend with a boat. But I did want to ask a question, not necessarily related to these topics, but my colleague Yoav wrote a story about the Sheriff, Anthony Miranda, who's been a guest on this show, about some of his involvement in what appears to just be scam COVID prevention. It was a badge you wore that was supposed to put something in the air to block COVID. So I just wanted to get your take, Deputy Mayor. You know, if this raises any concerns about him and his judgment, especially since some of his stuff is party related, and this is like law enforcement that he's working on, and he was involved in this clear scam about preventing a virus that killed thousands of people in New York City.
Hey, Katie, thank you very much for that question. Unfortunately, we are running up on time, so we're not going to be able to take any off-topic
course.
questions, but for questions not related to today's presentation, we'll refer you to the press office for
Yeah,
more.
make sure she refers that because
Absolutely.
I'm interested in answering that question.
All right. Earlier this week, the administration reached out to New Yorkers asking them to submit questions for the officials that have joined us here today. We will now get to as many of those as we can with the limited time that we have left. I'm going to go kind of quick since we're running out of time. Our first question comes from Damaris in the Bronx for Director Logan, who asks, how does the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice collaborate with law enforcement agencies and community organizations to address crime and improve public safety?
Well, thank you very much for that question, Damaris. We work very closely with all of those entities and including the public. The best example I can give you is Mayor Adams's Retail Summit and the subsequent report. We worked with all of those stakeholders, Deputy Mayor Banks, to pull together not only the law enforcement, but also partners in the retail industry, Target and bodega owners, supermarket owners, to talk about the challenges, but then also to brainstorm the ways that we collectively could address retail theft in New York by deploying various strategies for enforcement as well as education and support services.
Thank you. The next question comes from Executive Director Naveed from Cunil in Brooklyn. I believe you touched on this, but to answer his question, he asks, where can I report a hate crime or how can I report a hate crime?
Thank you for the question. It's extremely important when you witness or see a hate crime is to call 911. We want to be able to make sure that folks are safe in that instance. And when it comes to calling 911, please know that if you are a victim of a crime, your immigration status doesn't matter. We are here to help. The police department's here to help. And at the same time, when those calls are made to 911, those calls are always language accessible as well. So when you do call, make sure to mention the language or direct the individual to language, and they will connect to someone on language line to be able to facilitate that reporting.
And I just want to follow up on that real quickly, and this is not to put any guilt on anyone, but when you don't report, I mean, think about what a hate crime is, right? Mm-hmm. When you don't report it, we possibly give that individual the opportunity to commit more crimes, right? So it's not just the severity of that incident, but there's future. So you have to report it. That intel information that gets into the police department is very, very critical, and we need to, as a community, stop in these crimes as much as possible. So great question, and let's all team together on that. And I'm sorry to jump in and answer your question.
No, it's
And
totally.
I actually would also like to say that if there are bias incidents, because sometimes things happen and it's not, doesn't rise to the level of being a crime, bias incidents, please come to our website, report it to us, because we also look at bias incidents and we deploy education and community organizations to help support where there may be some of those incidents that are occurring as well.
And just to highlight on what Deputy Mayor Banks was saying, when we're looking at the data with the NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force, and we're seeing particular trends in areas of certain crimes at certain sort of levels, it could be in a particular neighborhood, we are engaging with community organizations and local precinct for intervention in those particular areas. It could be something like canvassing in the community itself, engaging with businesses, doing safety walks, whatever else possible to be able to ensure that we are mitigating those crime incidents itself.
I'm going to put our next two questions together for Inspector Russo, which is David from Bronx and Prakash from Queens, who asks, is it illegal for jet skis to jump the wakes on passing boats? And the second question is, are there rules against grilling with propane on a boat?
Okay, so in terms of the jet skis, yes, it is illegal to jump wakes. And that was one thing I should have mentioned, and I'm going to mention it now. As opposed to a car, you are responsible for your own wake on a boat. So when you are passing people, if that wake does any damage or causes any injury, you have to be very cognizant of that.
Explain what a wake is to the audience who do not know.
So-
what a
what
wake
is that?
Okay, so the displacement of the boat, you know, how much of the boat goes under the water, pushes the water aside as the boat moves through the water and creates the waves that you see coming out the back of the boat. So those waves that you create, depending on your speed and how your boat's sitting in the water, can become bigger. Usually it'll be in like a series of 3, but those waves that come out of your boat, that wake, if it destroys anything or causes injury, you are responsible for that according to the navigation law. So you have to be very cognizant of that if you're going through a marina or a swim area. And with the swim area, if I might mention, the one thing, we have a lot of people on jet skis now because they became very popular since COVID. People took to the water to have some sort of outdoor enjoyment. They lose steering when you come off the throttle. There's no more steering. So you got to be very mindful of that. And 2, stay away from swim areas. As Deputy Mayor said before, people are going to be using the beaches. Please try to stay out of those swim areas.
And are there rules against grilling with propane on a boat?
No, there's not. But you should be very mindful. It's not the barbecue in your backyard. You are on a moving vessel. It's going to rock. It's going to sway. You might have a gasoline engine. So these secure it down very well. Make sure you shut the propane off when you're not using it, and be mindful of any fumes.
Great. Next question is for Director Logan from Wilson in Staten Island, who asks, can you just explain a little more about what the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice does?
Wow, big question. The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice is a think tank, so we come up with ideas, and then we work across the city to help make those ideas a reality if there's something that addresses a challenge in New York City. We have various offices that deal with short-term rentals, housing, Office of Special Enforcement, who came before you at one point. We have multiple professionals who really work on policy, do research, and then our big thing is we take the data across the criminal justice spectrum and we look at trends. We talk with Deputy Mayor Banks' team and we explain things that we're seeing. And then collectively, we work with all of our partners to come up with strategies that will support New York City's ecosystem and create safe neighborhoods.
And a big liaison with the district attorney's offices, right?
District attorneys, the courts, the state agencies, governments.
And just as an example, when we start monitoring the amount of time it takes for a case to go through the court system, Deanna takes place. We have to coordinate the efforts of all the district attorneys, right? Deanna and her team takes place. So think of it as that if there's anything that crosses 1 to 2 public safety agencies, there's Mark J. And in addition to serving as a think tank and to come up with creative ideas and study what other things around the country is working and what's not working, so we could kind of be the support for all the other public safety agencies.
Great. Shiloh in Brooklyn has a question for the Office for the Prevention of Hate Crimes. What measures is your office taking to promote greater awareness and understanding of hate crimes?
Thank you. A good question. And I want to plug in a particular program that's been very effective in really having New Yorkers engage with each other and learn from each other. The mayor's initiative, Breaking Bread Building Bonds, seeks to bring New Yorkers together, 10 to 12 New Yorkers at a table from different communities across the city, to be able to engage in conversations with each other on how the human experience itself, the experience that people go through, is really shared in many ways, even though the outcomes might be different. And so Breaking Bread Building Bonds, the mayor started this off at his time as Brooklyn Borough President. It's something we launched earlier this year, and we have seen the utmost eagerness of New Yorkers in wanting to be able to do these events in their neighborhoods, in their communities, across the city itself. I think the first week of just putting out the form itself and having people sign up, we saw hundreds of people sign up. And insofar, the mayor's given us a commitment to 1,000 of these dinners. I think we're going to exceed those. I believe we are going to exceed. I'm confident we will. But at the same time, we will be hosting these dinners across the city as an office as well. And so our next one, we're doing ones with the the borough presidents across the city. And we just had one with the Bronx Borough President a couple of weeks ago. We had a good number, 100 people come collectively together. On June 22nd, we'll be at the Queens Borough President's office hosting one as well. For more information on this, please go to http://nyc.gov/breaking bread. And you can sign up to be a host, to be able to go through a training, as well as to carry out one of these dinners itself in your neighborhood or in your community. Or you can participate in one and experience what it is. It's pretty powerful. You engage with folks in these conversations, you learn from each other. I think one question that really resonates with me in these dinners has been, what's a time that you felt uncomfortable? I think everybody can really relate to that question, and the answers are different. But imagine sitting there with people from different cultures, communities, having that conversation, realizing, in many ways, that we share a lot more than we actually do, than we're different. And so I would say that that's one particular way. In our office itself, we're working across the city to ensure that we have a comprehensive approach towards hate crimes, that we're coordinating with city agencies under Deanna's leadership, as well as Deputy Mayor Banks, because we have 300,000 municipal employees, multiple city agencies. When it comes to hate, bias, and discrimination, we want to be able to ensure that we're consistent in our approach. And we're doing so in a way that puts the entirety of the government as well as the community in fighting hate, bias, and discrimination.
Thank you. And our final question comes from Marlene in Manhattan for the NYPD, who asks, when did the NYPD Harbor Unit begin? Why and how has it evolved?
So it started back in 1858. There were ships at Anchorage that were being pillaged by thieves. So a couple of cops decided to go out in rowboats and arrest these guys, and it snowballed from there. So the department started building wooden boats at that shop that I had mentioned that we have on Randall's Island. And they went from steam-powered vessels to gasoline-powered vessels. Now we have boats that are about, our biggest boats are 70 foot long now, and powered by diesel engines, 2,000 horsepower each, driven by jet. We've evolved to keep up with all the new fast ferries that we have in New York City. So all the New York City ferries are capable of doing 30 plus knots, which is about 35 miles an hour. So the Harbor Unit started purchasing vessels back in 2012 that could match and actually exceed the speeds of these vessels, so we could board them in case of active shooter or active threat or some sort of medical emergency.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Adams administration, I would like to thank everyone for tuning in to today's briefing. We look forward to seeing you all at our next one. Have a great day.